Oh my goodness. Seriously, I have to just do it. It's like I can tell myself I don't have to think about things that don't matter.
I was designed to do those things. How the hell does this guy know this about me?
It's impossible to not see.
When Dan read for my sister, she was like, he's psychic. She's like, how does he know that?
Yes.
She's like, it's human design, guys. Like, it's just a testimony of how legit it is.
Seriously, Danny was like FBI or CIA. He's like, how the hell does this guy know this about me?
Having my chart read, there were just thing after thing after thing that I was just like, wow, that's me.
This man is reading me and I've never met him before.
I was in the midst of one of the biggest emotional waves I've ever been in my life, and he saved my life.
It seems like everybody has the same reaction. It's that aha moment, and they want to find out more. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Human Design Advantage podcast. My name is Jen, and decoding the matrix for us is Danny Guru. Hey, Dan.
How you doing, Jen? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Happy Sunday, and I'm doing fantastic today. So today is October 23rd. We are going to be doing the spleen awareness in human design. But before we dive into that, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow the show. We have been getting a lot of views on our YouTube, and we are so grateful for that. So thank you for everybody who's tuning in and sharing the information out. We truly appreciate it here at the Human Design Advantage. If you haven't already signed up, starting tomorrow, we're going to be doing our 5-day free virtual retreat where we're going to be going over how to balance the 4 centers: emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual aspects in your life. And we're going to tie in human design with that. So if you haven't signed up already, you can find the links in the description or just click the tiny URL or any of the links scrolling at the bottom. Also, we have, what else? Next Saturday, me and Dan are going to be doing a mindful eating through your human design. Looking forward to that. Some people are kind of curious to how they're supposed to eat, and that's what this masterclass is all about. So if that interests you and you want to learn how your unique design eating style is and how to mindfully eat that way, definitely check that out. We're going to be working on getting this stuff together probably this week for that. And we do have some people that have already signed up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't already booked your session with Dan, make sure you guys do that, because that will help us.
Please, yes. Let's get that done.
Yes, that will help us, allow us to help you more when we understand, how you operate, and we can kind of tweak things according to how you would learn, how you would absorb the information best.
Coolio. So Jennifer, we're going to end up our talk about all of the awareness centers. We started, so to remind everyone, it's now 5 weeks ago approximately, we did 3 whole weeks on just the solar plex.
Yes.
And then we moved up to the ajna last week, and we're coming to the spleen this week to talk about sort of how that whole trifecta goes around and how it's all been working.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear about this. So I was listening to the stuff that you sent this morning about the spleen. And I love how Ra was talking about, the different circumstances that you can fall trap into from your spleen, open spleens and defined spleens and the fears. It's those fears.
Yeah, and they show up out of nowhere. So everyone who's got an undefined spleen in their body graph, they know that sense of not necessarily feeling good. And everyone who's got it defined tends to think they feel good. Basically, it's just something that you can sort of count on. The spleen's the home of our oldest mammalian awareness, this awareness of self-preservation, protecting ourselves. So think about what that means to us, like the turtle picture you showed me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and in the recording that I was listening to, I loved how he brought in during World War II with the kids, up to 7, because kids were left, they were able to step into taking care of themselves better. But the ones, 5 and younger, they struggled. They didn't really quite understand that fear. I think that starts to set in the older that we get. We can recognize the fear that's going to drive us.
It's
Savannah.
it's definitely a thing. Is anyone on yet, Savannah or Tressa?
Savannah is about to pop on, so I'm popping her up.
Oh, there she is. Hey, Savannah.
Yes.
Good to see you. I'm glad
Hi,
you're
Savannah.
whole thing.
Hi, I'm excited to talk about the spleen because I have like 5 or 4 of my gates defined, and so I'm a defined spleen. So I feel like a lot of the fears that come with. Oh yeah, because you have it open, don't you?
Yes, I'm outnumbered here. Yep, absolutely. Well, it's nice to have you, Savannah. So,
and then Jen, yes, happy to be here. Oh wait, sorry. What? Oh no, Jen, you have yours defined also, don't you?
Mine's
How many
defined.
gates do you have defined on it?
I'm not too sure. I gotta check real quick.
Yep. If Tressa pops on, she's defined as well. What we're trying to do is wrap this whole thing up and keep reminding everybody the distortion that happens in our mind that grabs what the spleen's beauty really is. Mm-hmm. What's it really doing? What's it supposed to do? It's supposed to keep us safe. That's all, in the moment, and how its frequency works in the moment, much like the individual pulse is just, it happens or it doesn't, except that the spleen is always on, firing off moment by moment awareness of our own safety in the moment. It feels good, it doesn't feel good. And
for everybody's going to experience that?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, whether it's defined or not, you experience it. It's just that when it's defined, you tend to have this thing that disregards it. It doesn't creep into your sense of not necessarily feeling good. And so people with an open spleen will very much, cling to a person with a defined spleen because it, quote, feels good. And that's why the not self strategy of an open spleen is hanging on to things that aren't good for you, and that's a hell of a keynoted phrase if you think about that. Everyone's got a huge bucket they could fill up with list items of those particular things that weren't good for them that they hung on to, whether you're defined or not, but the open will have it more so.
It made sense in the recording when he was talking about, the abusive relationships, how many get trapped. I bet you that dynamic is definitely happening in not healthy relationships. And they just kind of tends to spiral out of control. Maybe that's where people are getting trapped with, I can't leave this person. I have to stay here because of A, B, C, D, whatever reasons are coming up.
There's no maybe. There's definitely. And it's just a matter of how much. What we'd have to do if we had the honesty squad out taking an honesty poll, we would find that honestly 99% of the people out there can identify with all of this. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're going to go through the gates of the spleen. And let's talk about how cool it is. So like we share this with our, 100 million year old crustacean, super cousins from, up to 100 to, I'm not sure, 200 million years ago, 400, something like that. The spleen has been on the planet as long as there's been life, tangible, reproducible, valid, living, thriving life. The spleen and the splenic energy, and by the time it came to animals, mammals, and things that were moving and ate stuff, then the spleen was fully active, fully online. And what did it have to do for 100 million years? Be afraid so it could live. Yeah, that was its existence without consciousness. So those were just mechanisms. So step back and realize at the beginning of the spleen's development on our planet, and it is so ingrained in us at the cellular level, it was just survival only with no consciousness. So it was just a mechanic. It wasn't personal to the things that were surviving. Right. I would, if I could give them all a voice, they would be like, I don't care if I get eat. I don't care if I live. I don't care. Oh, step away from that. Oh, get away from that. I don't care if I live. I don't care if I get eaten. It didn't care. And so it was part of this giant cycle all to get us. So we could have consciousness and walk around on this planet, kept safe and protected with this beautiful in the moment and intuitive, able to penetrate into the future, almost awareness, sense, instinct, intuition that we have, that keeps us all collectively and individually and tribally safe. So that's what this thing is, and it's an awareness. Not, other things don't quite have the same way we will have to put it all in, because we have two other awareness centers. The newest one being emotions we spent so much time on, right? And when that gets distorted, the world's on fire. And then we have the mental system, and that distorts everything, putting the world on fire. And then the spleen, which ends up being the weakest because it's the oldest, and it only speaks once and softly. You guys can speak to that. By now, Savannah, I know you've noticed bunches of times. Jennifer, I know you've
Yes.
softly. It whispers softly, hey again, hey you, and it's always knows. And so speak, say something about that. What is this magic? Is this awareness? 3 awarenesses: mental, survival in the moment; mental over time; emotional, in this beautiful wave, churning up our feelings. Awareness, mental, spleen, in the moment. What is that like?
You want to go ahead, Savannah?
Okay. Yeah, because we're meant to be spontaneous, right? If you have a Splenic Authority, you're meant to live in the moment, be spontaneous, kind of change your mind on the fly. I'm trying to think what else. And then also, since we have it defined, it's almost like we have a consistent way of knowing what's safe for us, correct? But if someone has undefined, they can struggle to know like what is safe or not. So they have to kind of learn through trial and error and gain wisdom about what's healthy and what's not healthy. So like you were saying, they might struggle with staying in relationships that aren't healthy for them, or eating a certain way that's not healthy for them. But it's almost like if you have the defined spleen, we might be more naturally attuned to knowing what's right or not right for us.
Right. And how does it deliver its wisdom? Because awareness must interface with the chemistry in order to be projected out our mouths to demonstrate the awareness, and then share that in communion with the other.
Yeah. So what I've experienced and also heard people talk about is like those splenic hits that you get, they're very soft and very quiet. And so sometimes if your mind is just really busy, or if you're feeling overwhelmed, you will not hear it. And so they talk about finding stillness, right? So I've actually noticed, yeah, it's like when I'm doing yoga or, like meditation or breath work, like there's been times where I was doing a meditation and then I got this hit. It was like, okay, this is going to happen. Just be ready for it. And I was like, okay. So I just like wrote it down in my journal. And then sure enough, like it did happen like a month later. But it just gave me time to prepare myself mentally and emotionally for this kind of big thing that was going to happen in my life. Not that I'm saying I'm like a prophet or anything, but I'm just saying, like when we quiet the mind down, it can be, and find stillness is a lot of times when we'll get those splenic hits of what you should or shouldn't do. So that's how it's kind of like worked for me.
Give some examples. Like, can you put words? Jennifer, could you got any
examples?
Can I?
Yeah, because what's coming to my mind is like before I had my awakening, and especially before I dived into mindfulness, it's very soft and sudden. I wasn't listening, but I can recognize the point in times that it was telling me something, and I just kind of blew it off. I didn't listen to it. So having those experiences or those lessons so many times that when I had my awakening, I really got into mindfulness. Now I recognize it. And now that we're talking about it, I recognize it even more. I mean, y'all probably experienced it with me. Like I will get a hit and I will not budge on what my intuition is telling me because I've seen it play out so many times that when I do listen to it, it does happen. Like Savannah says, it gives you time to at least kind of prepare. The thing is not to get into the expectations of what your spleen is telling you, because you can get a hit and then you think that it's going to roll out that certain way. Mental, but it doesn't. But the energy telling you that, hey, just watch out for this, or don't get in the car and drive today.
Right.
Listen to that.
Right.
Because if you could get in that, you could blow it off, you could get in the car and then end up having an accident.
Right. Well, you'd be fine and not have an accident, but just things didn't go you had the hit. Listen to it.
Correct.
And experiment with listening to it, because our mind gets involved. You had mentioned mind. I have to keep bringing it back, because the awareness called our ajna, that has concepts and measures this and that, is constantly distorting that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, so what we call a hit, a splenic hit, this like thing we get in our body. It's like, oh, don't go in there. It's like, hang up the phone. Don't call that person. How about that one? Or, no, change that text. No, I don't like the text. Put it down instead of hurried to go along and whatever.
I've noticed also it's like when you get those splenic hits, it doesn't give you an explanation really why. So sometimes it's like doesn't make logical sense, and so it will go up to the mind. The mind tries to make sense of it or talk yourself out of that splenic knowing that you get. So I think that's probably the hardest part about having a splenic authority or having the spleen defined in your chart, is because it doesn't give you logical explanations why. It just gives you the information, and then you're kind of have to left to trust it and just follow it without really knowing or understanding the why behind it. Usually you find out later when you just follow it.
Right.
It's a step further than that too, because the learning lesson that my spleen has been showing me is, listening to the body, and when it does come up and I can't make sense to it, not changing that for the people around us, because the people around us may not make sense of it. And then we get backtrapped into our mind of like, well, maybe I'm not right. Maybe this isn't right. Or maybe that's kind of funny, because we can't make sense of what. It's just the feeling. Like my body, I can pinpoint it now. My body will tell me something, but I am so tapped into what my body is saying. I'm to the point where I won't budge with what it's telling me, regardless of whether it sounds crazy or not.
You won't budge against what it's telling you. Is what?
No, I won't.
You won't move against it. Right. Okay.
No.
So now think of what we're doing. We're delineating an experiment for everyone before we even get into the gates of the spleen. Because it's such an important awareness, taking up so much time in our amazing evolution on this plane, the distinction is the mind can't be the chemistry in the body. It can't know it. And Savannah's right on the money. It was such an important point. I might have even missed making that point by accident. That the mind tries to make sense of it, right? We have this abstract mind, so it tries to like clutter it about and make sense of it through an abstract process. We have this logical mind that wants to make logical sense of a pattern it can identify with. So where's the pattern? I can't find the pattern. It showed up at left. I can't make, quote, understanding sense of it. And then the individual in the mind wants to know. I want to know. I want to know. I can't know. Oh my God, there's a mystery. I can't know. I'm holding on to that mystery, to that problem, to that thing.
Yeah.
I can't get out. Yes.
And then I think if you have like an open ajna or open mind, right, where you're craving and wanting certainty, so I feel like it can make it harder to follow those intuitive hits when you are craving and wanting so that's been my problem, right? I have open ajna, open mind, defined spleen. So I'm wanting certainty and I want to understand why. So sometimes I won't listen. And then I get, bit in the butt and pay for it later. And so it's like this trust game. Like trusting yourself, and it can be really scary and hard. And
so let's call it an experiment, just so people don't feel like they have to commit to it. You know what I mean? Don't commit to it. Try it at first. You'll see. It's sort of like don't even believe us. See for yourself in a way. The experiment is to play the trust game, for a little bit. See what it feels like.
Yeah, and just another story to share. Back in 2019, I was signed up to do this the yoga teacher training. And I signed up for it, but then we didn't really have the money for it. And so I had to tell the lady, like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I don't have the money for it. And so then I went to bed that night, but then I woke up at like 6 a.m. and it was just like, this knowing of like, you have to do this, Savannah. Like, so I'm like talking in third person.
But it screams at you. No, I get the third person. It's like screaming at you.
Yes, it was just screaming at me like, no, you need to do this thing, and it was seriously, that was like a turning point in my life, I guess you could say. I called her back. I said, no, I want to be part of this. And we worked out a payment plan so that I could. And it really did change like the course of my life. And it gave me so many tools. And so sometimes I've also noticed, like, first thing in the morning when I wake up, sometimes I'll kind of just have these kind of feelings or knowings of like decisions. So sometimes they say like
Morning is
first
so
thing in the
good.
morning.
Yes,
Yeah.
because the morning is what you're recreating the Maya. You haven't finished recreating it yet. So you're in the innocent stage of your morning. When you first wake up, you're just an innocent little baby child at that point, you know?
Yes, yeah. Very true.
So great. So that's good. That's a great spot to notice that. Yeah. They start coming through, the knowings come through. And then your mind grabs it later and starts distorting that and adding decision-making authority in your life over it as it relates to go here, do that, think this, don't think that, stuff like that of that nature when the spleen. But I have noticed, Rob pointed out there's like, it only speaks once. It doesn't come back and say, hey, dummy, I just told you. But that's not totally true.
I don't think that's true. When I heard him say that, because there have been, let
me draw the distinction, Jen. Classically, it's true as a textbook goes because it doesn't come back to say, quote, the same thing. But when it's onto a line of a certain type of thing and you're going against it, that spleen will get louder. Each new thing new because the moment's new. So Rob was technically right when he said that, but he should have fleshed it out in that recording to what it was we're saying here. Because Savannah, you experience the same thing. The spleen gets so loud and it does come back and it starts screaming at you, sort of.
Yeah, I've gotten like multiple hits on something if I'm ignoring it. Sometimes it will like come back louder, like, hey, pay attention to this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry. Louder. That's a good way to put it for sure. So let's you want to go through. So now we've discussed it and we've seen keep going back to the awareness centers. If you recall, the mind, that third ear, third eye sits up top, and then we got these two awareness centers down on the sides. And it's this bad boy that's distorting both of these guys. And
can you explain what? So I have all three defined, but because I have the emotional defined, that's what makes me emotional.
Mm-hmm.
How can you tell like the other two if someone has a defined spleen and a defined ajna, where's their awareness center? Yeah, how do you determine what the awareness center is?
You don't determine a pecking order. I may not fully have your question right, but you don't determine a pecking order per se. You have to exist with the individual distinct differences between them working in whatever concert they give you. So we've just talked about the spleen, right? This oldest survival, immediate, in the moment, intuitive awareness. We just described that totally. We've been doing that for the past 20 minutes. And last week and before, remember that mental hangs on to things over all of time. The spleen has to struggle to hang on to it. In fact, it better be really bad or the spleen won't come back, as we are well aware of that phenomenon too. So, and solar plex just gets distorted, angry or sad or up, or, it's just distortion, blaming, judgment. The solar plex is forcing all this awful blame, shame, guilt process upon us that we hang on, and the mind gets out again, hangs on to it, and the spleen delivers us a fear, and that hangs on to it. So we're trying to disorganize and crack up that monopoly the mind still has, quasi-monopoly it has on our decision making, because the spleen just gives us hits. And when we do the trust game, say that trust game again, Savannah, because when we do that, just as an experiment, you'll see, oh my God, that thing's right. Oh my God, it was right. And then your little 5-year-old will come back because it remembered, oh yeah, that thing was right. That thing knew, it remembered. Remember, the kid always knows, that little kid inside you, it actually has a truth nugget waiting for you. And then it's up to your adult self to, put that into practice in your adult life. But the truth nugget is there. It's undisputably there. I
like how they say, like with the spleen, it's like you get these intuitive hits, but you don't listen to them, and then that things happen, and you're like, I always knew that was going to happen. It's like they always kind of have this foreshadowing of something like before it happens, and so, but yeah, we just ignore it because the mind or our emotions is louder than those intuitive hits, and so yeah, it's interesting.
It's interesting. So we've talked about the splenic hit, and we've done this. And Jennifer, anything else you can think of to describe what your splenic awareness, how that works in you? Because I'm very
into. My whole life is off my intuition. Is my splenic hits. it's taken a lot of training. I'm not perfect at it, and yeah, there are
No,
some
but
times.
as a mechanic in your life, just describe it's working. Now that you're looking at it, so seeing it, the seeing of it, sees it work, like, put it in your own words again.
I just know.
Okay, I love that. I love that. So everyone with a defined spleen, know that you have this capacity that you just know, and it's sharp and it's fast, and it comes in stealthy like, and it shows up, bam, the hit, a splenic hit. Does that sound right, Savannah?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. Right. Me too. So let's start looking at the gates and just go around this little splenic wheel of ours, this little center. So on the right hand side, you just see the names of the gates, and as you realize, this just spreads out into the rest of your body graph, and it goes through all the different circuitries, and it goes through all the different waves of awareness. So on the outside, top left, we have our depth, 57. The next one is this intuitive insight. I'm just going to go around the horn so you can hear the keynotes. So 48 is called the well, the gate of depth, and it's this intuitiveness. Gate 57 is called the gentle. That's the old I Ching name, and it's the gate of intuitive clarity with the potential to have sudden intuitive clarity. 44 is this tribal stream of alertness. 44 says coming to meet. That's the I Ching name, the gate of, quote, alertness. And this is always alert as to what's gone on in the past. So immediate survival awareness about the past. Gate 50, immediate survival awareness about responsibility. Have I taken on too much? Is there too much? The gate of values, the old I Ching name for it was called the cauldron. Then gate 32, duration, the gate of continuity. The I Ching called it duration because it wanted to literally go the distance. 32 would like everything to clip along and go the distance. Duration. So we updated that to sort of continuity, and its fear is failure. It's in the tribal circuitry. 28 is this the game player, and 28 is good because the old I Ching called it the preponderance of the great. So notice the Chinese, when they put the name together, they recognized that, hey, of all the gates, this bad boy is about the preponderance of our great or not. So they put our primary awareness of what is great or not for us. Ultimately, it ends up being our purpose, that great thing. They put that in the spleen. Go figure. And then gate 18, I love this one. Work on what has been spoilt. That's how they wrote it. But it's the gate of correction, the ability to basically challenge the authority. So as we start to go around this, we can read that each one then has a fear that goes with it. So 48, if 48 is trying to basically find a pattern that is worth final expression, because it's got all this depth, this great well of intuitive in the moment. Remember, the frequency of this is in the moment. So everything I'm mentioning here is an in the moment process. So 48, in the moment, do I have the depth? And if that depth is there, boy, does it want to express. So its fear is inadequacy, that I'm not good enough to express. I don't have enough to express. My well isn't deep enough to express. That fear drives intelligence. And so that's the next concept to keep in mind. Now, obviously, fear drives all intelligence. Gate 57, I'm just going to go around these, and you guys interrupt when you want, okay? Gate 57 is this intuitive clarity. So this is the ability to penetrate into the future a little bit. This is our primary survival intuition. It fires up
I have that.
the integration circuitry, and it's very powerful. It wants to look into the future. Its fear is of the future. The future is going to get all messed up. It's all going to break. It's because it's afraid that things won't work out, and it's an intuition of ours. And think of how that intuition therefore stops us from going into that room or clicking to that channel. It's like, no, I don't want to click there, or whatever, turning left or turning right. This is a very important one. 44, this alertness, coming to meet. It wants to bring the troops to meet. It's tribal after all. And it's like,
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, Dan. Can I make just a comment about the gate 57? Yeah, so that one, it's almost like you're scared of the unknown. It gives you anxiety, right? It's like that fear of the future.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it can go up into the mind, and the mind wants to try and like prepare and get that certainty. And so I've noticed like sometimes like anxiety can come with gate 57, especially if you have like an open head
Yep.
and open ajna. And so it's like you try and take control so you can know what's going to happen in the future. But of course, it's like we can't.
We
But it's
can.
like really gate 57, it's you have to
It's the
kind of
closest
surrender
thing. Yeah,
to
our gate 57 is the closest thing we have to being able to see into the future. It's our
yeah.
most powerful awareness in a way because it's been with us the longest. It's the most deeply embedded into this genetic structure that is this vehicle we walk around in.
Yeah. And so I that's just what I've noticed because I've struggled with anxiety. I've struggled with, because I also grew up like poor. And so, right. And the spleen's all about like survival, making sure, everyone's fed, like the needs are met so that you can keep, moving along. And so I've just noticed for me, like that's been a huge one for me is I want that security also as a first line, right? I want that security. I want to know my needs are going to be taken care of. And so I've just seen gate 57. I've kind of had the low expression of it like throughout my life is this anxiety about the future and wanting certainty. But it's almost like you have to release like knowing and like just surrender to the moment. And because the
Because
worrying just makes it worse, so
57 has the extraordinary potential for the clarity that comes with intuitive insight, the extraordinary potential for intuitive clarity. Now, just that's a lot. That's not a mundane it's not a mundane process when you zoom right in on it. So
yeah, because what can happen is you stop trusting yourself and the mind steps in and wants to control the situation, but you have to surrender to it and not give into that anxiety and that fear. So I'd say that's been a hard part of
It's
having
okay
that.
not to know all the details.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
True, and in that fact of the not knowing all the details, right, then suddenly we get caught up in a not self mind trip. Remember the distinction. We've learned this all the way through this whole series that the old 7-centered way is who we are not, and mind was in charge back then. So, and it's only been a few hundred years. That's not long in evolutionary terms where mind is truly no longer in charge. Not even supposed to be, not even a little bit. It actually got totally flipped on its side and turned into a measuring device, a metronome, a tick-tock machine that literally measures for us and gives our intelligence that information so that we can keep rehaving the splenic intuitive awareness of 57.
Yeah.
Or
Hey,
that
Jen. So, Jen, you have 57. Did you struggle with anxiety and knowing?
Absolutely. Big time.
About the future?
I was on a lot of medication. I got off all medication, but and all stuff for anxiety. I mean, because I'm the emotional too, I would also suffer from depression as well on those emotional waves. But the anxiety was huge, and I'll experience it now. But because I practice mindfulness so much that when that anxiety comes up, I know just to step back. The most important moment that we have in our lives is this very moment, and it's the choices we make in this moment that will determine our future. But we base decisions out of the fear that's popping up and that anxiety. So when it does come in, I try to take a step back, and just like I said before, I don't need to know all the answers. I don't need to know how everything's going to play out. Am I safe? Am I protected in this moment? And that's the most important thing. That's what's helped me with my anxiety as well as like yoga and breathing and everything else that goes along with it. But yeah, anxiety was high.
And sometimes it's like, okay, what fear really is the spleen? And then what fear is like my mind taking that and trying. So I think that's probably the hardest part about this is because, you could be like a naturally anxious person because of certain gates and channels in your chart. And sometimes you're like, okay, is this my spleen or is this just my mind? taking a hold of that and blowing up and expanding and playing on those fears. I'd say that's probably
preying on it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, well, that's the experiment, is to keep watching it. So by now, Savannah, there have been moments of clarity where you see the difference. Maybe you're not perfect at it yet, but you're just in the experiment, whatever. And so, but you can see the development of your noticing it and seeing the difference.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're after. You to notice right away in your experiment that you can start to see the development of how you're noticing that this is now what's true. Because just about everything, and anybody who hasn't been read yet, just most things in their life is this battle between stuff they know is true and stuff they think they have to do, and this turns into a mud pie of some sort in life. And so we can untangle all of that, and that's the beauty of it. Let's keep going. 44, if you don't mind. 44, coming to meet. This coming to meet is bringing the people together. Again, it's tribal. It's pointing at the ego. So therefore, it's really it's the primary gate to inform the ego as to whatever splenic awareness the ego will have benefit of. And the ego likes to have benefit of things like continuity, duration, stuff's working. Did you bring the right troops? Do we have the right temperature here? You know, if the tribe needs to be hot, then we need to go hot. If it needs to cool down, cool it down. Do we have the right people having come to Met? Are we going to survive? Is this good? Do we have the right forces? And it has this memory in the past that there are times when it didn't. And its ultimate fear that's baked in from 100 million years ago is, will we as a species go extinct? Will we be extincted? You know what I mean? Extinction. And that's actually in every gate 44. So that's profound.
I have that one too.
Yep,
yeah, Dan, you have that one. That's the only gate you have in your
Yep.
undefined spleen, right?
Yep.
So how is that expressed for you
It
throughout your
expresses as in, oh my God, oh hell no, that might go this way. That might not work out that way because I've got a thing from the past, this awareness that will suddenly just hit me. And if I'm all by myself and there's nothing transiting, sometimes it won't work very well. It's just sitting there more dormant. And if there's something transiting, or I'm now in expression with you guys, for instance, or in aura to other splenic people, oh, it's alive and well. And it shows up as always looking over the past with this actual potential fear of extinction showing up. But it brings the past forward. That's why it wants to come to meet. Where's the tribe safe? After it's come to meet. Tribe's not safe alone. It's safe when it meets. That's the alertness. The alertness of this gate is, hey guys, rally up. That's the alertness of this gate. Rally up. Get together.
Because it's fear of the past. So gate 57 was fear of the future. Gate 44 is fear of the past, remembering all the bad, scary things that happen in your life. And so sometimes
that's the mental mind game, is the remembering of it. So the mental mind measuring unit is supposed to just have measured. Hey, I measured once upon a time. I have a measurement. Stuff went bad. If it brings that measurement into the future as part of the discussion of decision making as it relates to what the spleen's hit is, the spleen already gave us the truth. It gave us our moments of slices of truth, and it will keep giving it as soon as you start watching it. It gives it a lot. The spleen does. The spleen talks a lot. It's a very talkative little bugger, and it'll give you lots. It's a nice movement.
Because gate 44, I've also heard it expressed as like sometimes you can hold on to like why something won't work or why something didn't work in the past, and like why we shouldn't try that thing again. And so sometimes can it come across as like this pessimism, kind of like.
Oh yeah. Yep, that is definitely a thing. So but it's a potent awareness. It's pointed right at the heart of the tribe, as it relates to what the gate 26, the fire of the egoist, is going to protect the tribe with.
So Jen, you've had this. What's your experience with gate 44? How's it expressed for you?
I would say one thing that now that I'm hearing y'all talk and I'm thinking about it, gate 44 is probably one of the ones that saved my life, especially when it came to drinking. That pushed me to get sober, because I kept having the same, like the fear, I'd get into a situation. It was my past that was, the same circumstances happening. And I got so petrified that, oh my God, something's going to happen again. Something's going to happen again, that it literally pushed me to make a move into a change of something different, because it was like all this past stuff that's coming up. It'll pop in now. But I try not to like hold on to that fear, because, you know, when you get older, you can start to see patterns or same situations come up.
It's the holding on to.
Yes.
What's the one aware? None of the other two awarenesses don't have a hold on to feature. One has a wave feature, so it experiences over time in a wave, and then that experience is gone. By the way, it's remembered, it's felt, it's in program, but the experience is over. Spleen, in the moment. Mind, what's the frequency of mind's awareness? This frequency that it's in. Do you remember?
It's all eternity.
All eternity, over all of time, birth to death.
Yeah.
For us, for our experience, birth to death. For the cosmos, it's overall, it's eternity.
Mm-hmm.
So it can constantly, and it's perfect eternity when we don't let the mind start deciding for us or driving us into this panic state, when we just allow the mind to have remembered it. Even trauma. Hey, you had that trauma. Yep. That's spleen says, oh yeah, you had that trauma. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And it puts it in its memory box. It's like, dude, I gave it to you. Now you know it was a trauma. Okay. In the future, I am still traumatized. That's the frequency of mind.
I have a question on that. Because I do have something coming back from my past, and it is giving me that anxiety right now.
We all do, Jen. We're on a planet filled with it. Keep going, please. Continue.
What is that telling me? If it's, you know, it's a situation that hasn't been resolved, but it keeps repeating, like it keeps coming back up, and it's giving me that anxiety. Even though I don't know, I guess it's 57. I don't know how everything's going to turn out.
Right.
But my intuition is saying there's something not correct in what keeps coming up.
So
does that make sense?
It totally does. So here we are. If we're on a phone call, and this is the human design reading that we're doing, and or follow up and coaching, which everybody needs. You guys, you're watching coaching. We are coaching each other now. So what you're watching is, so Jennifer, to answer that question, you have this process going on. You're aware the spleen is giving you the information, so it's not like you're ignoring it, but you're also aware how much of my mind is just holding on to that through eternity. It was important then, and it's equally important now. You know, all the time, but it can't be, because whatever importance from then has to have morphed. We've moved in space and time. So it has to change. So what's important now, by definition, is different, but mind holds on to it over all the time to make it be the same.
It's triggering an emotional wave.
And then the wave comes in. So you have this trifecta of awareness in the wave. So once the wave rolls up its sleeves, hang on, you're out deep sea fishing, dude. It's like having to go home to be home in time for the street lights to come on. That's not going to happen. You'll be home in 2 weeks, you know. Sorry, kiddo, you get seasick. Sorry, kid. See, you're new to the crew. We'll be home in about 3 weeks.
I'm trying to find clarity.
Right. Well, try not. Your body's just going to give it. You know, trying is the work of the mind in a way. Spleen doesn't try.
I'm tying it all into my design, because then it's not bringing me peace.
Right.
So then all of that's kind of, my body is telling me that something
not giving you peace. And think of the importance of this awareness. So as a manifester, you know that signature of peace brings you health ultimately. It brings you health. And that's just your signature to where you're supposed to be. So you can see you're out of it. And so you're in this process. Now, each time you go through this process, right, over the upcoming year and more and on, more and more that you get out of it, making yourself aware that the same old stuff isn't really true. It's not whom you are, and or it is whom you are, and you start to see it with the more distinguished and differentiated clarity. I am not this. I am not my actual confusion. I get to make things become the product of my confusion. Moving on to gate 50, or past 44, the fear of the past, on to gate 50, the fear of too much responsibility. I am not the too much responsibility, and I am not the fear of the too much responsibility. I am the cauldron of values that's chugging away, doing what the mystical 5,400-year-old Chinese I Ching guys called it, the cauldron. And this cauldron is tribal, and it's part of that which fires up and empowers and ignites the whole splenic system in the first place. That gate 50 goes to this sacral. Gate 27. So the sustained life force of the sacral empowers the spleen just like it does the emotions. So it fires the source wave for the spleen, just like that other channel is the source wave for the solar plex coming off the sacral, the source of its power. So it's empowered by it. So suddenly it's pointing right at the fire. So 50's got to have a cauldron of values, because if it's got the wrong values, that sacral sustaining energy will pull it in and make it start caring about something that was too much. Oops, I miscalculated. The values that we have here are no good. The tribe fell apart. The babies didn't survive. Gate 44, where are you now? Type thing. Gate 57, what do we do? Gate 48, give us your depth of talent and skill. It's showing up. You have a depth waiting to be expressed as a brand new talent in a new way, in a new pattern, and you're ready to share it. Give it. That's what Gate 48 is always ready to do.
So, Jen, do you have gate 50?
No, I just have 57 and 44.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because gate 50 is in the sun transits right now. So
yeah, I was gonna say that we
all have
posted about that.
No wonder we can speak so well to it. That's right. In Savannah, we found ourselves talking about this for like 2 hours almost.
Yeah, I have gate 50 in my Pluto, in my design
times,
Pluto.
right?
Mm-hmm. And so when it went over the fear, it's like fear of marriage, fear of having kids, and that was like me to a T. You know how girls are like, "Oh, I'm so excited to get married and plan my wedding." Like, that was not me. I was like scared to death of marriage. Like I don't know if that's just because I grew up in a home where it was kind of dysfunctional, but I was not the girl who was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm married, I'm getting married," and then
you were out looking for it. That wasn't your motive, which is probably good, because there are a lot of girls who get in unhealthy relationships because they're looking for that.
Oh yeah, and then the fear of having children. I was so I did not want to have children. Like I hear all these girls, they're like, "I can't wait till I have babies," and me, I was like, no. Like, sorry, that sounds really bad, but like, I mean,
not bad. It's just
no.
We've got to get used to this not being bad. And our partners have to get used to it not being bad if it's in us, or we have to get used to our partners not being bad because that's in them. It's a survival just hit. It's not like your whole life. It's just a moment.
Yeah, but it was almost like I grew up in a culture and a religion where marriage, like there was like all this pressure, like hurry and get married and hurry and have as many babies as you can. Like that's your duty. That's your, so I almost feel like I had these fears because I have gate 50, but then I almost like got pushed into getting married, having kids. I mean, I didn't have my first baby till 4 years after I was married, and it was a surprise baby. I wasn't planning on it. But yeah, I totally experienced the fears of gate 50, and I feel like because of the culture I was raised in, I was pushed to almost like face those fears
and take on that responsibility, because the deep cauldron says, "Hey, this cauldron is deep, and we're here to preserve. It's part of the channel of preservation, here to preserve the tribe, physical preservation." So think about it. All splenic awareness in humanity is empowered by that source wave empowering it that says we shall preserve the tribe. It preserves the babies, and it preserves the culture, and it preserves the principles, right? All the tribal things, the community.
But then I also experienced the other side of gate 50, to where you do have the babies, you do get married, but then it's almost like you take on it's like you overcompensate and you take on too much. You're like helping everyone, serving everyone, and then your needs get put on the back burner, and then it leads to burnout. Like I experienced that big time as a mother, is just I put my needs to the side, and then everything goes to everyone else, and then you especially as a projector, like not having that
bitterness.
It's
big time. I could write a whole book on burnout.
perfect
Right.
that you're saying that, because we're going to touch on how to balance all that stuff, because I love how you're bringing that in, because this happens. We get out of balance, we overcompensate, we're trying to survive and everything like that. So the retreat we're actually doing this week is all about how to balance all those things because of these
Same
certain
thing with the
aspects.
vortex. Same thing with the vortex that we're building. So
Well, yeah, we're gonna be launching that on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's exciting. But yeah, I almost feel like because of the burnout in Gate 50, it's actually what pushed me to go out and look for how to heal the burnout, how to, and that's when I started doing yoga and breath work and all these other things. So it's just
notice,
really
let's take us right into the non-accidentalness of this. So the helplessness that we had to basically do the right thing for ourselves. You have Gate 50 3 times in your body graph, as I recall, right, Savannah?
Oh, I have it just once, but it is also Gate 50 is like people who have that, they have this sense of like integrity and standing up for like the morals and values. And I have like I've challenged authority to stand up for like my morals and values. So I've just seen a lot of Gate 50 throughout my life.
Right. Well, okay, you wouldn't need to have it more than so you have Gate 50 in your body graph, and the next thing you notice is that this depth that's driving all of our awareness is this depth of this cauldron, and how deep can the values go that become flexible enough and practical enough to absorb all that energy coming out of the sacral, empowering its existence in the first place. It's really quite a communion there, and it's designed for one thing, to preserve the tribal structure. Tribal meaning community, the family clique, whatever, group of friends, band of brothers, the tribal structure, and the ever morphing tribal structure. So
I've also heard that Gate 50, it's kind of like this mama bear energy to it. Like,
values, think of its name, values.
Yeah.
It's keynoted with this extraordinary need to set the right values that preserve the continuity, and it's in the channel of preservation. Great sacral sustaining power to preserve, guided by our oldest awareness, and technically our most powerful awareness as it relates to its depth. Its depth is so profound. 32.
So Gate 32 duration. Does anyone have that? None of us have it, right?
Nope.
It was in the transit though, the sun transit last week. So.
Yep. So we're going through all the gates of the spleen this week. This is the perfect week to have done the spleen. What we're doing, it's not this week, the past few weeks, ever since we left Gate 45, part of the vessel of love, the love of the body, this intelligent design of humanity said all the gates of our spleen, our immune system, that which keeps us safe, the home of the T cell, the immune system, our safety, the washing machine that washes the sickness away and brings the health in. All of that happens right after Gate 25 in the quarter of duality called bonding. So that whole, couple months of time almost is all the gates of the spleen. Right.
Because the end of August is when it went into Gate 18. And then it's almost like the whole month of October, the sun just goes through each one of the gates of the spleen.
Right. It was very, very, very specifically, the body knew to line up its splenic development right after the love of the body was in the sky as part of our vessel of love incarnation cross, Gate 46. Meaning it was in the sun. When the sun was formatting the babies to be the love of their body, right after that, it was like, okay, let's be kind to you and give you all the spleen gates that are the love of your body and keep it safe moment to moment to moment, which is the only place you'll ever exist, no matter what your mind thinks, no matter how your emotions swell.
Just lots of splenic energy in the month of October.
Lots of it. It's all that. Yeah, right. So 32, this gate of duration, this gate of continuity that is also tribal. So notice as we go from 44 to 50 to 32, that's tribal corner. You know what I mean? That's Dr. Rogers's home, in the neighborhood, keeping the neighborhood, the continuity of I would say Dr. Rogers probably had great values. You know what I mean? 32 says we don't want things to fail. And it's the fear of failure. It believes, can you read what you wrote down there, Savannah?
The scarcity-based fear believes you can't have or accomplish your dreams. Also, that you lack consistency, drive, and ambition to achieve your goals.
Right. It's this fear that you won't have the right ambition power to achieve your goals. And if that right ambition power seems there, that it won't last. And suddenly, if there's a slight little disturbance in the line, the immediate hit, like the pluck of a string of a harp, that immediate splenic hit would ring with fear of failure. Now, if you let your mind grab onto that and turn that into something that its measurements think that it's supposed to do something with it, your mind will grab it and try to be the authority over that, the authority to make you make a decision. Even if that authority is, it grips you in the moment in fear, and your decision is, oh shit, I was currently in motion, I stopped being in motion. I just, or whatever.
So gate 32, if you had it in your body graph, could you struggle with starting something? You might be too scared to start something.
Right, because it would mean stopping the old thing. And stopping the old thing could be, there's lots of failure there. We could fail. This might not work. It wants a sure thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wants a sure thing. Very conservative about it. It's very sure thing. Probably one of the most conservative gates in the body graph, gate 32. It's like, it's the ultimate, middle of the road conservative. Let's just keep it all the same. Don't get too drastic and don't change things too much. You know what I mean? We, keep it all. It wants its quote continuity because that's good for the tribe. Dude, if there's an even flow, if the oil spigot for your oil field is just flowing, that's good for the tribe, right? Mm-hmm. If the Mohegan Sun gambling institutions, if people just keep coming in and gambling, that's good for the tribe. Basically, that's the continuity of their resources. Big scale, little scale, everything in between. So that is its fear. Its fear is, oh shit, failure. Failure. And so it can cause it to not do things, won't even try, like you said, Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen that. We've seen people gripped by that. So when you're gripped by being so afraid to just even afraid to try, if that's a fear in you, and suddenly you'll notice it because it will drive anxiety into your mind. Because the spleen says like, hey, I'm just doing this one function for you. I'm just letting you know. And the mind's like, yeah, I know, I'm holding on to it now for hours and hours. If that happens, you now know that's who you're not. Anything else about gate 32?
No. Do you want to go to gate 28?
I do. Mm-hmm. I'll read it because I forgot. You're on your phone, Savannah, so you have to squint too much. Gate 28, preponderance.
Oh. Did we lose Dan?
Yeah, what happened? I guess Dan fell off. I don't know. There he is. Hold on, guys. Sorry about that.
We got cut off. Was that just me?
Yeah, it was just you. But I've been having issues with my internet. Well, today there was an issue, so I don't know what happened to you.
Well, that was rather sudden.
That was so funny. Right when you started reading it, it just like cut out.
Yeah.
So preponderance of the gate of the game player, fear of death, right?
Yeah.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, read it.
Fearing that life has no purpose and that life will end before one knows what makes it worth living or gives it meaning. Constantly seeking what makes life life worthwhile.
And that constantly seeking is why it got the name of the game player. Because it's an awareness, so it's moment to moment. It's individual, so it's unique. It shows up in a pulse. It's individual, so it must empower itself, and it must really empower the other and sort of get that out there. And so...
Yeah, I have gate 28, and Jake has gate 28 in his moon, and so...
So he's driven to play the game of what new risk shall I take? Because if life's not worth living and something, your purpose isn't being fulfilled and you can't tell, then up goes the risk level as to what you're willing to risk in order to make life be purposeful.
Mm-hmm.
Make it so wise life so dang hard. If it's too much of that, you'll take a larger and larger risk at things. Ultimately, in the sixth line of gate 28, line 6, is the ultimate for basically, Evel Knievel jumps over the Snake River. Well, that's really that's a coin toss. 50-50, Eves. You could die, you could live,
But if you have like hanging gate 28 and you don't have 38 on the other side, right? 38 is the gate of the fighter. So it's like this energy to fight for purpose and meaning. So isn't it gate 28? We kind of struggled to fight. We kind of can give up, right?
have various versions of giving up, staying in, finding it purposeless, not knowing what risk to take. It can turn into a deep, deep melancholy over what do I even do? What's the purpose to it all? And that melancholy can hang around for, it is, dude, it's in our spleen. It then gets jolted into the mind about what's the purpose. And if there's one thing that minds hold on to on this planet, plenty of self-help articles are written about, find your purpose. It's about, say, it's a big theme in humanity. And it's a big theme here.
I could see why Gate 28 people would be like attracted to religion, right? Because religion gives you like a purpose and a meaning and an explanation why. And my husband he's like very religious, and so I think it could be hard for people with Gate 28 to release. Like,
that's a good perception. That is a great perception.
Yeah, because my mother-in-law also has Gate 28 in her moon, and oh man, that's like
her purpose. She's got her purpose carved out with tribal-like continuity, right? We want that continuity. I carved it out. Now, as she's in a family, there's people around. That means Gate 32, 44, and 50 are in her life. They're around. They're in the world. They're like, okay. So if the freak individual carved out a cool purpose, that's it. Now we're keeping it. You know, the unique individual carved out something a little bit new. Here's that purpose. Let's stay with it. Yep.
Yeah. So mine is 28 line 3, and so is my husband. So it's like, isn't that like the trial and error process of figuring out what has meaning?
What's worth it? Yeah. So you live out a life of figuring out what's worth it and coming to that purpose, like we were talking about earlier, until your whole body realized through its values and its purpose that it needed to get yoga, it needed to put your body in a way, in a place that put you in the alignment that you needed to feel you were going to be in. And it's still here with you today, Savannah.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that fear of like not figuring out what my purpose is, like, or being able to fulfill it like before I die. So I've definitely felt that fear.
Here's a perfect example of what I said in the very beginning. Both things can hang on to what isn't good for them. The spleen can give a hit to the mind, hang on to this thing, and the mind be like, oh, I'm hanging on to that thing. It gave me the certainty I needed. You know, let's say it's an open mind. I needed the certainty. It gave it to me. And suddenly, but that Gate 28 might not have been so good for you. And it might start screaming at you later, hey, this might not have been so good for you, but you stopped listening.
Yeah.
It's always there to keep saying, it's healthy for you. You might find your purpose in this direction. Let me give you the creative pulse of the individual nature of my stream of intuitive knowing. Intuitive knowing. Let me give it to you intuitively as a hit. Here it is. Your purpose might be here, kid. That's what Gate 28 is always saying. It's the potential for it to be at the other end of the hit. So if you keep listening to it, then the next thing you know, you see how you navigate. And you play that trust game as an experiment to demonstrate that, holy cow, there's a development to the process of me noticing it once I start being in the experiment of trying to notice it.
Yeah.
It shows up.
Yeah.
That skill develops. You can't help it. Just like the kid, the 5-year-old develops.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the kid. So
hit 18, the last one.
Actually, before we get off 28, I do have to say one thing. 28 has a unique genetic construct whereby the selfishness that comes out of 57, because 57 goes into all of integration, which is purposely self-concerned. And so 57 is its awareness is already predetermined that it will lean towards just survival self-concern, which is wicked important. We need that. Gate 28 is the genetic construct that will pry 57 away from that nature and bring it into a more tribal and or group setting, so that it has to share that and not just think about itself.
Yes, I remember reading that if you have some of this like individual circuitry, that's kind of more focused on your individual survival. If you have Gate 28, it makes you like everyone's surviving.
Yes,
like,
it opens it up. Hey, you can't just be on your own there, Mr. Integration Circuit. You have to come help over here too, so it cracks it open. It cracks open lots of individual circuitry. Again, the Chinese I Ching, they had a very divine name for this: preponderance of the great. The great question: who am I? What's my purpose? That's the great.
Yeah.
So they gave it that name, and we turn that into, as we preponderate, we notice we play games in our 9-centered vehicles. that was made when they were in the 7-centered vehicle. In a 9-centered vehicle, it's like, oh, well, we're going to play some games because, boy, we have to experience some human things, and I need to find the purpose. So we'll take some risks. So moving on to gate 18. Now, think this whole thing is a whole symphony inside of here. All these things working in various combinations. And whether you have it defined or not, they're all coming in and out and working for you because it's in the world. If you have it defined, that's where it's the most steady, and that's where you can rely on it. And so you start to see these nuances of what this awareness does that speaks softly and carries a big hit if you'll listen to it. Gate 18, work on that which has been spoilt. That's like old English talk for the gate of correction. Correcting what has been spoiled. And it's the gate of challenge. And it's the splenic awareness to recognize you're messing with the patterns that have worked. And I don't know if I need to challenge your authority here. It first starts with the child's challenge of the archetype of their parental authority, the father and the mother and the father. And the kid starts to challenge it. And very often, the challenge is just in the form of a question. It's not there to challenge that it's bad. It's there to challenge just to touch it again, make sure it's still working.
I think this is playing out in the collective big time.
Very much so. Very much so. Our gate 18 is really trying to correct their gate 18. Let me tell you, there's a whole, we could write, if we could animate these gates and give them cool little characters on some kind of anime screen where they talk out their various roles, they would be a hell of a little unit.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, they would be a thing. They would be, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, brought forward into the spleen, and we can use those old Chinese names. The Gentle, coming to meet. We can give that a name. The Well, Gate of Depth. Anyway, so 18 has this powerful awareness of what to do with what. Well, what to do with gate 58, the motorized adrenalized fuel called the joy for the love of life. The joy for love, that's what its name is. Gate 58's root adrenalized energy that's pointing at it. This becomes a very powerful channel that has a very clear judgment on what to challenge, what not to challenge. And if it's not a very clear judgment, it has very clear power to do it without its clarity. Because mind gets in the way and mind distorts what needs to be judged out. And suddenly you get a very powerful energy that can almost even sound like it's discontent. But yet it's collective. It's in the collective circuitry. So it was never meant to be personal. So if you have this gate and you start pointing things at somebody else, that's bringing it personal. And that person starts to resent it. And then you start to resent it. And suddenly you can see this pattern unfolding in your life. And you realize, oh my God, that just happened.
Yeah.
Or if that's your husband, recognize, oh Jesus, I'm gonna have to learn to laugh at this.
Yeah. My sister has gate 18 and her son, and she's on the cross of upheaval. So she's noticed this throughout her life where she is constantly challenging authority. And what I think is interesting is it's like they fear authority, but in that same time, they're driven to like challenge it and poke it.
Well, because the spleen has an overriding mechanism. Don't forget, it's 100 million years old or more, and its overriding mechanism is, but my awareness for your survival will sooner or later trump the fear that's stopping you from doing something.
Yeah, but then my other sister has gate 18 repeated like 4 times in her chart, and she does.
She's a correction.
She just constantly distrusts authority, whether it's my parents or whether like church authority or like government authority, just any type of authority. She is constantly questioning it and challenging it.
We need that.
Yeah. And so, if it wasn't for gate 18s, we wouldn't have people standing up to corrupt, people. The
truckers would have never rolled if it were not have gate 18. All that purpose being drafted in the truckers that rolled in Canada that started and ignited something that was very different. All that passion and that cauldron of values that says this is what we're going to do. And that overcoming of the fear of their continuity, gate 32. This is a great example. All of that depth that they knew was there. We have the depth, dude. This is the pattern. We've got to roll. When the truckers rolled, they rolled. And then the intuitive insight to say, tomorrow, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. This is our only intuitive way into tomorrow. Our
Yeah.
individual uniqueness must be preserved. That was what they rolled for, and they were right to bring their grievance. Every grievance shall be heard. To, you know, the citizen with their right to have redress, to be able to redress with their own grievance onto the government for which they have their power by the consent of the governed. And that's
Yeah.
what we did. And they
And
did that, but no gate 18.
Yeah.
The physical root joy, the joy, dude, it's joy that actually empowers the challenge.
Yeah. Like my sister,
Thing.
my sister would challenge bosses who were mistreating people. She would challenge, you know, my parents if they were doing, you know, so sometimes I feel like gate 18 has like a negative connotation, right? Because people don't like people who are kind of like criticizing organizations or, you know, standing up to things that are wrong. But it says sometimes if there isn't anything for them to stand up to, sometimes it can turn inward and they can kind of nitpick themselves because they're, yeah. And so sometimes like becoming aware of, okay, if I have gate 18, am I being nitpicky on other people around me and on myself? That would be kind of like the unhealthy expression, right?
Yep. A distrust of authority, the fear of challenge, and basically the fear of authority. It's the distrust of authority that they don't have your best interest at hand, I would add, or are mistakenly off track, you know, without any intention, and that are driven to challenge authority because of that. And now, you know, what does that say? Analyzing flaws of authority. That's a thing. Seeing it, witnessing it, and flaws in others. So that's a way it can come out in what seems like a negative way. Just because you see a flaw in something, it's just your way. You can't help but to see it. You see the flaw. It doesn't mean you always have to voice it. And plus the self-correcting theme to improve yourself and to improve society. I sort of butchered that, Savannah. Sorry, I was adding my own words. Anyways, so.
Oh, Jen, what were you saying? Are you? Oh no, you're muted. We can't hear you. You're muted.
I was saying, I think we need more of this because just like your sister, I commend her if she was standing up for people that were not treated right in the workplace. I mean, I'll be honest, the reason society is the way that it is because so many people have shut their mouth and not spoke up with the stuff that needs to be done. You can see it. I mean, there's been videos on TikToks where someone, you know, an old lady someone snatched her purse and people are just walking by, not doing anything because they're oblivious to it. But I think
they're afraid of it. They know their spleens are picking it up. They know. Well, maybe some don't. Some might not. You're true. But
some might not. They're the one you can tell when you watch the people, and you've watched people enough. The ones that just walk on by blatantly, they're oblivious to it. Some may flinch and be like, "Oh, did I see that?" And then it's the fear of not saying.
And then they still walk by.
Yes, but again, we can look around. The eye-opening thing is the container we live in, society it is. I think everyone can agree on some level that there's not something right. Something is not going right. Doesn't resonate with what our body is saying. But very few people are actually speaking out about it or doing something about it. So that's why I said I can see Gate 18 really working in the collective right now, because it's going to trigger so many fears in us. It's going to get to the point that the matrix is going to trigger so much fears into us that people literally have to start sharpening sticks to do something. Do we, as a collective, people, a tribe, really need to get to that point to where we have to do that?
No, we don't.
We shouldn't.
And think about the beauty of the spleen with all of these things in there and what you just said, and that you're right. We do need more of this in the world. Essentially, and we have lots of it. It's starting to show up.
It definitely is.
Yeah, and we need it. But
it's like us sharing about the state national. You know, that's at first I'm seeing it more and more.
Teacher. Yep, that's correctiveness. That is straight up challenge to authority.
It's challenging. Well, even to go through that process and do it is challenging the authority. but it's right. It's the
Right.
truth.
It is the truth, and people should have the choice to be able to make that choice. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. Some people, most people will choose to do it once they start really seeing it. Almost everyone will choose, and some won't.
Once other people start on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
But I bet you the people that started the movement, I wonder if they
Oh,
have.
there was a huge challenging force and a spirit. So if I just roll through these all, there was a huge challenging force that led to the individual spirit of trying to find the purpose that said, hey, we don't care, failure, damn the torpedoes, that said, we're taking on this absolute, all of this, we're taking on the authority of doing this, and we're taking on this responsibility. And because they could see what the past was going to rain down like hellfire on us if we didn't, and it looked at the future and saw the exact same thing that the past just saw and said it's true, and went to 48 and said, we got this, we got the depth, we got this, we got this. That's the story going from 18 around to 48 of what happened at the beginning of the, become an American state national movement, for instance. And in a quicker way, it went right through the trucker movement to become the truckers. And anything, civil rights, I promise you, it went through this process, and it had the depth. Every time I watch Martin Luther King, that man was amazing. And so as it relates to the message, he was able to galvanize within the world, and that started at a corrective process. He was a corrective man. We need to look up Martin Luther King. You want to do Martin Luther King next week?
Yeah, I was thinking that would be a good one.
Savannah, do you want to do?
Yeah, that's so funny you said that, because I was like, yeah, we should look up his chart, because it makes me wonder if he has gate 18 to challenge that authority, challenge the government, and gate 50, right? That gate of values.
Yes, and any of the splenic gates, and basically to challenge the old way. He was a challenger of the old way, just like a founding father. He was really right in line with the values of how the nation was founded. He was trying to challenge the old way to usher in the new way.
Yeah, so I know sometimes we can look at gate 18 and kind of be like someone who's just constantly finding flaws and, likes to challenge authority. Like sometimes that can be viewed as a negative trait. But if you actually look at it, like, it's mutative. It helps us evolve as a collective and become better and break out of, if there is people in authority who are abusing their power and are corrupt, gate 18 is there to say, like, hey, this isn't right. Like
it energizes
gate 18.
It energizes the ability to challenge with your depth, that then will empower the mutative process of deriving the purpose. Back to that 28. So many of these gates are the most important gate in the spleen. So every gate is currently the most important gate in the spleen. Look at it that way. And just going back to, we should probably just go back full view, guys, and wrap this up, because as we've gone through all of this and we keep looking at, I hope everyone remembers what it looked like, the three awareness centers, is the way they make a triangle that goes from here up to top and then down to the other side, sort of like a little vortex. And the whole body has its mind up at the top, spleen down in the lower left-hand side. Oh, you got it. Yep, thanks. So just take this image in, spleen on the left, solar plex feeling, emotional wave on the right, mind, ajna concepts, measuring and frequency over all eternity up top. So go back full screen, I guess. Thank you, Jen. God, that's handy. So that's what we just did. And the spleen, that's supposed to give us, think about it, the spleen gives that one that gives us the most by volume would be the spleen, in a sense, of individual unique awareness hits, communicates, packets of data that turn into true enlightened conscious awareness. So it's constantly rattling these things off, and we have to get them out of the small and make that preponderance of the great be back into the great. A splenic hit should be viewed as something that's enormous. Otherwise, the mind will get a hold of it and start distorting it and relegating it into mothballs and non-existent.
Yeah, I feel like in our today's society, it's all like logical mind and prove, you like physically prove what you have in front of you. And this spleen is kind of like, I don't have evidence, but this is in my body intuition, like, tell me to do this thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like there is, I feel like intuition and like intuitive hits are seen as like not as credible or not as valued. We focus more on like the logical mind. And so for sure, I feel like.
I think the spleen is talking to a lot of people, telling people that things are off in the world
Yeah,
right now.
the
And
spleen is
people
telling
really
everyone,
need to start listening and
no
tuning
matter
in.
where they're
Because
at.
if they don't, they're going, we're already seeing the consequences of those results, and we're going to continue to see the consequences of those results. So that's where I'm at. Like I'm so tapped in. I'm listening to my body, and I'm seeing things play out in the world. And I have moments where I get frustrated because, a lot of people they'll get aggravated with their life or the society that they live in. But if we're going to have to wait till the fear starts getting them to move, it really doesn't need to be like that. So spleen is talking big time to a lot of people, and we need more Gate 18 in the collective.
It's in the world, and our collective human spleen is speaking to us. It's saying, take the values needed that you need to be safe. Quit blaming your neighbor. Quit being mad at your neighbor. Really is what it's trying to say as it relates to our current divisions. National neighbors, actual neighbors, something in between,
Yeah.
Global, interstellar neighbors, maybe, who knows, all of it, So did we cover this? And its awareness and its mandatory use and place in our awareness process? How we do?
Good. I loved it.
I think it was great. Guys, if you really want to start listening to your spleen and really tap into the moment, we are offering mindfulness here at the Human Design Advantage. It's one of the best tools that has absolutely saved my life. And for those who really know me and know me personally, I have my intuitive hits. I do not budge, where before I wasn't quite listening to them through my life, and I suffered a lot of consequences because of it. But my spleen has saved my life in multiple different ways, and it all came with mindfulness and all these other tools, breath work, yoga, like Savannah was talking about. They're all necessary tools to help you navigate through not only what's
hypnotherapy.
Hypnotherapy.
Yep.
What I was gonna say is also the spleen. If you have an open spleen, they say going out into nature, it acts as kind of like a cleansing washing of an open spleen, because the open spleen is like absorbing and taking everyone's fears, and so sometimes it hangs on to all those fears. They also said like going out in nature, going out and walk in nature, it helps cleanse those fears from you. And so I think that's another tool, is nature. So
nature is necessary for almost everybody. But yeah, that's a great point that it does that. And get outside and connect with it. You are made of earth stuff, so
right. Shouldn't be that big a surprise, actually, if you really think about it. We already know it's sort of there. So in your experiment, as you're in this whole process, it's not about always getting it right. Even when we got a good handle on it, we'll have an occasion in the future where it catches us and, oh shit, I'm on the wrong side of that. You got to laugh at it. You got to see it, that it now doesn't matter the same way, because you can witness it. You got to be in the experiment that sees that the splenic hit is giving you your truth. And it's so profound. You got to start hearing it and have that trust experiment where you're just like, I'm just going to trust this time and see what happens.
Yeah. That's exactly how I tapped into my intuition, was that I trust it, and then it happened. And in that moment, I had a self-realization of, oh, holy shit, something's talking to me. And then it happened again. I was like, okay. And over the past 5 years that I've been listening to it, it's always been backed. Just don't get lost in the mind of, trying to, make sense of what it's telling you, or working out the details. And then you place expectations and all those other things. Just listen to your body. And when your body is talking to you, just see what happens. Enter that experiment, and you won't be disappointed.
You won't be disappointed. You'll see. Enter the experiment And now we've got all the awareness centers down. Go back and watch all these episodes, and you'll see the spleen is part of the granddaddy of it all, and it's right in the now. Start listening to her. She's very, very, very important to you.
Yep.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank
Bye,
you
guys.
so much for tuning in. Don't forget that we have the 5-day virtual retreat starting tomorrow. The link is down below for you to sign up. We're going to be going over how you can balance the 4 key areas of your life: emotional, mental, physical, and mental, physical, and spiritual. And then next Saturday, me and Dan have a mindful eating workshop to help you learn how to eat according to your design type and also incorporate mindful eating habits. So with that said, we hope you have a beautiful Saturday. Much love, and y'all have a great day. Bye now.
Bye.